Let me ask you something. What if the you that you think you are? Well, what if it isn't just one single person, but more like a complex internal community? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty revolutionary idea that our minds are way more plural, embodied, and interconnected than we've ever been taught. So, yeah, let's rethink the self. You know that feeling, right? It's that internal tug of war. One part of you is just desperate to chill out on a Sunday night, but another part is buzzing, insisting you've got to get a head start on the work week. That feeling isn't just you being indecisive. It's actually a clue to the very nature of who we are. For a long, long time, Western psychology was really built on this idea of a singular, unified mind. One you, one consciousness. But what if that's not the whole picture? A whole new wave of psychological models is popping up, and they're all suggesting that what we call the self is way more complex, more dynamic, and honestly, more plural than we ever imagined. Okay, so here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to start by grounding ourselves in the body, understanding how it literally remembers our stories. From there, we'll meet the mind's inner family and look at how we can heal our younger selves. Then, we'll connect all that inner work to the wider world through the politics of pleasure, before finally, and this is the big one, challenging the very idea of a singular mind. So first up, we've got a fundamental shift in thinking. This idea that our mind isn't just some passenger riding around in our body. Nope. The two are deeply, intricately connected. And our physical selves, they hold memories and wisdom that our conscious brain might not even know are there. Somatic therapy is built on this very idea. So instead of just talking about our problems, it asks us to listen to our bodies. By paying attention to our internal physical sensations, there's a fancy word for it, interoception, which is just our ability to feel our own heartbeats, our breath, or those gut feelings. We can actually access and release emotional wounds stored deep in our nervous system. And the science behind that gut feeling of safety or danger, it's absolutely fascinating. Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory gives us a map for it. He came up with the term neuroception to describe our nervous system's subconscious radar. It's always scanning our environment for threats, long before our conscious mind even has a clue what's going on. This theory organizes our responses into a kind of hierarchy of 3 states. At the very top, we have the ventral vagal state. This is where we feel safe, connected, and ready to socialize. Now, when that neuroception radar detects a threat, we might drop down into the sympathetic state. That's the classic fight-or-flight response. And if the threat is just too overwhelming, we can fall all the way down into the dorsal vagal state, a really primitive freeze or shutdown response. Understanding these states helps us see our reactions not as failures, but as these amazing adaptive survival strategies. This quote just captures it perfectly, doesn't it? How emotional experiences show up in the body. From inflammation to high blood pressure, it's not just in your head, it is in your entire system. So if our body and mind are so connected, what's actually happening within the mind itself? So we've established the body and mind are one big system. But what about the mind itself? What if it's not just one single thing, but more like a bustling inner family with lots of different members, and each one has its own personality, its own purpose? This is the core idea behind a model called internal family systems, or you'll hear called IFS. The innovation of IFS is pretty profound. You see, older models often saw the mind as this single ego that needed to control all the other chaotic, messy parts inside. IFS just flips that whole script. It says having multiple parts is totally natural. The goal isn't to shut them up, but to understand them, to heal them, and to bring them all together under the leadership of our core self. It's a deeply compassionate approach. IFS organizes these parts into 3 main roles. First, you have the exiles. These are our youngest, most vulnerable parts that carry the burdens of past trauma, all that pain, shame, and fear. Then, to protect us from feeling that pain, 2 types of protectors show up. Managers are the proactive ones. They try to control our lives to make sure our exiles never get triggered. Then you've got the firefighters. They're reactive. When an exile's pain does break through, firefighters rush in to put out the flames with impulsive behaviors, like numbing out or creating a big distraction. So, if all our parts are often running the show, who are we? Well, according to IFS, beneath all of them is our core self, and it's undamaged, it's wise, and it's whole. When our protective parts feel safe enough to just step back a little, this self naturally emerges, leading with these incredible qualities like calm, curiosity, and compassion. It's like our innate inner leader. All right, so we've met our inner family. A really important question comes up. How do we heal those wounded parts, our exiles? And this brings us to our next big concept, the powerful idea of reparenting. Reparenting is really about addressing the past by taking action in the present. It's this process of consciously giving your inner child or your exiled parts the validation, the safety, and the care that maybe was missing when you were growing up. It's a way to heal some really deep-seated emotional wounds by finally getting those unmet needs met. Now, reparenting has a pretty wild history. Early models, like one called total regression, were incredibly intense and pretty controversial. We're talking patients sometimes living with their therapist to completely relive their childhood. Today, the practice has evolved into what we call limited reparenting, and it's a core piece of evidence-based approaches like schema therapy. In this model, the therapist provides that nurturing and support, but, and this is key, within very clear and strict professional boundaries. So as we're healing our internal worlds, it kind of raises a bigger question, right? How does our inner state relate to the world around us? This next section explores this really cool idea that feeling good, embracing our wholeness, and prioritizing joy isn't just self-help. It can be a radical, world-changing act. This powerful concept from author and activist Adrienne Marie Brown reframes pleasure not as some selfish indulgence, but as a form of resistance. Pleasure activism argues that systems of oppression work by denying joy and satisfaction to marginalized people. So reclaiming our right to feel good in our bodies, in our communities, in our work is a political act. It's about making justice and liberation the most pleasurable experiences we can possibly have. And this idea of embracing all parts of ourselves, well, it has ancient roots. Tantric psychology offers this holistic path to healing by integrating everything we experience. Instead of trying to suppress our desires or our shadow self, Tantra teaches us to use all of life's experiences, the light and the dark, as fuel for our own transformation. Okay, we've explored a mind connected to a body, a mind made of many parts. Now we're going to take the final and maybe the most radical step. What if those parts aren't just subpersonalities? What if they can be distinct, conscious beings in their own right? Plurality is the big umbrella term for this experience. It completely challenges that foundational Western assumption of one mind, one person. It suggests that sharing a body with multiple conscious entities is a natural variation of human experience and not automatically a sign of some disorder. One really specific and honestly fascinating form of plurality is tulpamancy. It's a meditative practice where a person who they call the host intentionally creates a sentient companion in their mind called a tulpa. And these tulpas are experienced as fully autonomous individuals with their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own consciousness. Now, it is absolutely crucial to make a distinction here. Tulpas are very, very different from alters, which are associated with clinical dissociative disorders like DID. While alters form as a response to severe trauma, tulpas are intentionally created. The tulpamancy community describes their experience as healthy, functional, even beneficial, a non-pathological form of multiplicity that exists completely outside of a medical framework. And so we end right where we began, but with a much, much wider perspective. We've journeyed from the body's wisdom through our own inner family, all the way to the radical possibility of plural minds, all of which leads us to this final question. If a single body can be home to multiple conscious beings, what does that even mean for our definition of a person? It's a question that could change everything. Thanks for exploring it with me.